So please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, one of the kind of cool and lasting things you get to do as a mayor, it's kind of our equivalent of being president and appointing Supreme Court justices, is appointing police officers and promoting police officers. And I know I speak for the board when I say we're very, very excited about not only our two new police officers, but also promoting Eddie Vaz, who I've known since at least high school. When he was telling me to move along, but it's very fair, very fair. But we are very, very excited about. We had the opportunity to interview both our new police officers here, and I think we found two young men that are fit. We almost think we had created them in a lab with the chiefs, and they have the great experience, the great attitude, and we just think that they have the perfect personality to fit in very well in our town. You have to be very serious, but at the same time, kind of really want to get to know the community and make a difference. So we think they have. There's a lot of reasons to become police officers. 99% of them are. These are two that epitomize that feeling. So it's a great honor to be swearing you guys in Irvington tonight. We're very lucky to have you. So thank you for being here, and thank you and welcome to your family members, and congratulations to you as well. Keep it down.
Kiss the baby.
Oh, sorry. This presidential thing's gone on too long. So first, we're going to start. We're going to do the resolution first, and then we'll do the swearing in. So resolved to appoint Paul Bibero, I've been working on that as well, to the position of police officer grade 1, an annual salary of $101,332, effective November 9th, 2016, subject to completion of a probationary period of not less than 12 weeks and not more than 52 weeks. I will make the motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Let's swear you in, Paul. Oh yeah, Eddie. Okay, let's not jump the gun. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just working on Bibero. All right. I'm gonna get it down. You got it. All right. So where do you want me to stand? Stand right here. So I want you to raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I, Paul Bibero.
I, Paul Rivera,
Of the Village of Irvington, County of Westchester, State of New York,
of the Village of Irvington, County of Westchester, State of New York,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
the duties
of the Office of Police Officer
of the Office of Police Officer
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. Okay, I'm gonna put a hole in this.
Thank you.
That's a great number. Thank you, Chief. Give you a patch and back stuff, Joe. It's nice, it's official.
Thank
Here's the badge. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, resolved to appoint Angelo Liberatore to the position of police officer grade 4 at annual salary of $69,600. 9th, 2016, subject to completion of a probationary period of not less than 12 weeks and not more than 52 weeks. I'll make the motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Please raise your right hand. I, Angelo Liberatore,
I, Archangelo Liberatore,
of the Village of Irvington, County of Westchester, State of New York,
of the Village of Irvington, County of Westchester, State of New York,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of police officer
of the office of police officer
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Welcome aboard.
Congratulations.
Give you the rest of your stuff here. Where's the other? Thank you. Last but not least, resolved to appoint Edmund C. Vise to the position of sergeant at an annual salary of $115,519, effective November 8th, 2016, subject to probationary period of not less than 12 weeks and not more than 52 weeks. I'll make the motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? All in favor, get on there.
Got it covered.
All right, excellent. Is you ready, Ian? Raise your right hand. I, Edmund C. Vise,
I, Edmund C. Vise,
of the Village of Irvington, County of Westchester, State of New York,
of the Village of Irvington, County of Westchester, State of New York,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and I will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office of sergeant
the duties of the office of sergeant
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
So you want to say the national anthem?
Yes, and no paperwork. He's just been.
You're all staying for the board meeting, right?
Yeah, Sergeant, lock the doors. Let him.
I want to get a photo of the
Oh, boy.
Then comes some little police stuff.
Wow, a little police.
Now we need the whole.
Oh, my God.
All different agencies.
Oh, my gosh.
Some more now.
You made this
Oh, that's great.
Did you get it?
There's no rush. The rest of the meeting's boring, so I think. So any there's lieutenant and a captain, you kind of like the underachiever now, or what?
Freaks out that you lost
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Annabelle, you going somewhere?
Congratulations. Good luck.
I said, now it's got to have it on the one.
You wanted to make a difference. The book's suspended.
Thanks. Take care. Thank you for coming.
Great. Welcome. Welcome, welcome.
I don't think
Oh, yeah, I know.
I think I am.
Looking out. Standing room only. Standing room only.
Plenty of seats now. So I'll start with the announcements. The first one is this Friday, November 11th. We're lining up actually at 10:45. The Veterans Day ceremony is this Friday, November 11th, starting at 10:45 a.m. I think one of the earlier agendas had 11 a.m. It obviously is the 11th day and 11th hour, but we started a little early, so we're ready to go. It's in the middle of the ceremony by 11 a.m. That's at the War Memorials on Main Street. Hopefully we'll get a bunch of people there to celebrate our veterans. Another fun event, I guess Veterans Day is kind of fun. It's actually not sad like Memorial Day, but the Turkey Trot is a completely fun event, which is Sunday, November 20th at 1:30 p.m. at the Dallas Lane School. You can sign up beforehand, or you can sign up the day of. It's about 2.5 miles. It's a fairly easy course. Even I can do it. And I did it with my son when he was as young as 6. So it's all levels. You don't have to be an elite runner. It's just a fun day to get out, especially if it's nice weather. And looking a little bit further ahead, the holiday tree lighting ceremony will be Saturday, November 3rd at 4:30 p.m. I'm sorry, December 3rd at 4:30 p.m. at the I.K. Benjamin Center, which is right here at 71 Main Street. Anyone else have any other announcements? Other than don't forget to vote tomorrow. I don't know if you probably haven't heard much about the election, but that's actually tomorrow. So
I have my normal, what will be normal for a while, because I just want people to remember to think about our safety initiative, and the focus for the next few months is really being aware of pedestrian safety, and both from a driver's perspective but from a walker's perspective also. And that information is available on the website, and also at Village Hall. There's little auxiliary things like accessories like a must-have bumper sticker for free, posters and the like. And I think right now also there's the award winner reel of the Walk Safe PSA from May and June this year is playing on the Village cable and Fios channels. And again, the Facebook page has that information. That's Slow Down Irvington is the Facebook page username.
Maybe we should announce that although it looks like in front of Village Hall tomorrow, if you look quickly, you might think there's no parking, but it's 15-minute parking, especially to make it easier for people who are trying to park here for voting. Yeah. So I don't know if that's 6 spots or so, but it should be helpful close to yeah. Okay. The spots will turn over quickly, so it should be helpful to people who are looking for spots to park here.
I agree. And if you don't know where you're supposed to vote, you can go actually to the Westchester County government website and look. There's a whole section on the Board of Elections, and you can put in your address, and it'll give you exactly where your spot is. So it doesn't have to be a mystery. Although if you show up to the wrong place, they'll actually tell you where you're supposed to go also. It just takes 2 steps that way. but tomorrow, big vote. Anything else on announcements? Otherwise, we'll move on to correspondence, but I think maybe we're going to make it, we'll move it right into public comment as well as the correspondence.
And this is tape?
Yes.
This works?
Yes.
Okay. Honorable Brian Smith, members of the Board of Trustees and Administration, I would like to address 3 concerns about the fencing around the basketball court in Scenic Hudson Park. Our first concern is the aesthetic one, on which we've written back and forth several times about the fencing obstructing the beautiful panoramic view we had enjoyed at the Hudson River and skyline. So I'm going to move on to our second concern. Our second concern is about the particular type of fencing constructed around the basketball court. Scenic Hudson Park was built upon an industrial site where the soil, groundwater, and sediment sampling show the presence of petroleum hydrocarbons, tar, and lead, which required remediation steps in order to provide safe public access for use of the waterfront park. It is our understanding that instead of removing tens of thousands of contaminated fill, the village opted to contain the hazardous material within a barrier cap to prevent direct contact with the toxins. In addition, the village rehabilitated the bulkhead on the water to provide structural support for future release of contaminated particles into the river. The landfill cap installed is a 30-inch soft cover, which consists of 12 inches of low permeability soil, which seals off the contaminated waste, followed by 12-inch drainage layer, and then 6 inches of topsoil. This means you can dig down 18 inches before hitting the protective seal of permeability soil. The fence installed is a split rail fence with wooden posts to hold the railings. These wooden posts sell anywhere from 7 feet to 10 feet or more feet in length. The wooden posts for a split rail fence must go down a minimum of 24 inches to keep the fence stable, and a general rule of thumb when constructing such fencing is that 1/3 rule, meaning 1/3 is in the ground and 2/3 visible on top. Around the basketball court are 54 inches in length, which, going by the 1/3 rule, means they may have gone down about 27 inches, perhaps more. But even at 24 inches, that would have broken 6 inches through the protective cover. What assurances do we have that the cap was not compromised by digging the fence posts, and that measures were taken to prevent uncontrolled release of the hazardous waste products into the soil and air surrounding the post, and that this area in particular will be monitored for toxic vapors and contaminated soil on the surface, to which young children, adolescents, and fetuses are particularly vulnerable. Our third concern, this should be enough, but our third concern came when we collected over 100 signatures from people objecting to the fence as unnecessary and an eyesore. A handful of people refused to sign and repeated the same script to me, which was, "The park is for everyone." They then stated the fencing was not to keep the geese off the playing court, but to prevent spectators from running onto the court during night games. They added more significantly that bleachers would be built to watch the games at night. We can only imagine what kind of view shed will exist from several vantage points if this is done. And hence we are asking, does the Recreation Department, the Scenic Hudson Park, or the Village of Irvington have any next steps in mind for development of which the community should be made aware regarding the basketball site or any other areas in the park? And I want to thank you for giving time to voice these concerns we have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have a copy of that, of the signatures?
Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
It's with the agenda.
I mean,
Signatures, but not everything she said was right.
Yeah, I don't know if we have,
Only the senior stuff.
Mary, I don't know if we have,
Not points two and five.
okay, yeah, if we could
I
get,
have 10 copies here,
Great.
so, here, and the original petition signed.
yes, I have a copy
I'd
of
like
that.
to hand that, as well as a picture of what the fence looks like
Who wants to
from
come?
inside the senior center.
So, how do we, this,
Well, the part with the cap, which is obviously the most serious part, my understanding is the minimum length, or minimum depth down there is about 30 inches. The spots are
Yes,
much bigger.
30, no, the
It's not,
area,
The picture.
we
it's the
can't,
first phase.
we can't debate this now because I don't have all the facts.
You can only go down 18 inches before you hit.
But that's not everywhere in the park. I know that.
That may not be everywhere in the park, so we need assurances to what actually
We will.
landfill is underneath those basketball courts.
We can find that out.
Okay.
yeah.
And it
We get to the
continues,
park, so we're good.
it has been disruptive.
He wants this.
Yeah, Brenda's the important one. She's the official books and records.
So my assumption is we'll be talking to Joe and try to figure out what, if there is an issue with that.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
okay.
Okay, thank you.
Any other public comment?
Well, I'm wondering if you could answer whether or not, sorry. So people can,
It's just for people at home and for the record.
okay.
Hey. All the people are in one route, it's hard to get out.
Dilda Zucker. I'm wondering what your comment is about any future building over there. And I am concerned because we do so much here in Irvington we try to do for everybody. And we have this senior center in this beautiful park, which was meant to afford views of the river for everybody. And if something is going to be built right in front, blocking the view for the seniors, I think you're taking something very important away because,
It's about bleachers. I haven't heard anything about bleachers.
Okay.
That's, I can tell you that.
Okay.
And
I
we'll
mean, the
ask the
fence in
rec, but-
itself is, sort of ugly, but, anything more than that would really restrict the view. And as seniors in the community, there are many things that we can't do anymore, or we don't have a hand in anymore. And I think the senior center is a very special place for many people. So I think the court and the people should be aware of it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing it.
I mean, I guess I would add that we should just ask Joe to confirm that or inform me.
Sure. I mean, we haven't seen any capital projects or anything, but.
Laura Antonetti, and just briefly, I, for one, would like to know the process that is used when a decision is made to put up a fence like has been placed around the basketball court. Who decides that? Is there any consideration for aesthetics? It's not appropriate for a basketball court. There's other fencing in the park, and I'm not lobbying that the same fencing should have been used around the basketball court. I don't think there should be any, because I truly think, and we have been told, Mary and I, that measures were taken to keep the geese off the court. But I would, for one, would like to know what measures have been taken, and to go to such an extreme as to put a fence like that around a basketball court. I was down at the park one day. People were complaining about it. They didn't live in Irvington, but of course they can use it because it's a public park. They were complaining about it, and children were playing on the fence, doing, I don't know what they were doing, but they were on top of the fence, and they were going over the fence and through the fence. What's the process? What went into that decision? I would like to know.
So there's the
There's the aesthetics.
No, I was just saying that the process
Oh.
is the Recreation and Parks Advisory Council, which is a group of 10 volunteers, 12 volunteers, something like that? 9 volunteers, who is kind of the residents, kind of representation that works then with the rec department. They decided that this was the fence that they wanted. The aesthetics were based on other places they had gotten feedback on fences, like the dog park, the potential dog park, and some other places. That's why they thought that's how they picked this particular type of
And that would be so appropriate in a dog park, and it's appropriate
In a horse farm?
no, the nature center.
Yes.
It's so appropriate and pleasing in that kind of setting. And I want to say that the refurbishment of the basketball court is beautiful. I know it was funded by Chase and the Knicks, but it's beautiful, and it's such an enhancement. The takeaway is the fence, and I think I've made my point here.
And I think the reason that they felt they needed the fence was they've had to replace it much more frequently than they thought they would because of the geese problem. And they've had dogs, they've shot blanks, they've shot basically, kind of like explosives at them. They've gotten someone come in to disrupt the nests every year. We spend tens of thousands of dollars on each park trying to keep the geese out. And frankly, nothing's worked because one of the main reasons is the court heats up. So the court's warm. So the geese love that. And that's one of the reasons it's their favorite spot. They don't like to have to fly over a fence. They can't go underneath fences. They can't duck, which was kind of a joke Joe made about ducks can duck, but geese can't. So they've tried a lot of things, which is what kind of Signage Hudson told us was, you've tried more things in most places to, deal with the geese, and frankly, we haven't been able to successfully deal with them, especially with the basketball court. And we get lots of complaints from the basketball players that say, I can't play in the basketball court when there's geese droppings all over it. And again, we have 2 full-time parks employees.
Right.
So, it's difficult. Is it, and we this board isn't going to typically get involved in like fencing decisions and things like that. We've heard you loud and clear when the fence has to be replaced. I think there'll probably be more output, but I think that and for anything else that's going to be built down there, I think we'll publicize it more. Again, we haven't approved any capital budget items for anything down there. I haven't heard of anything. The bleachers, I haven't heard that rumor. But I think that's the and the RPAC does have open meetings with open agendas. Can everyone pay attention to all those things? Of course not. You see our attendance at our meetings, but so it wasn't done in a vacuum. But maybe it didn't get the input it could have. That's always hard to say.
Right. Well, thank you all for your time.
And we appreciate all the outreach and emails from all of you on this.
Great.
So we'll make sure we follow it. So.
I'm sure we'll be able to have perhaps some internal discussion about this. I really appreciate the public input from all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Connie.
Can I just make one comment? You've got a bunch of kids down there. You've got a bunch of kids down there playing ball. Those balls roll, and if you go down there at any time and watch a bunch of kids play, they're climbing over the fence to retrieve the balls. Somebody's got to be concerned about that.
Can I ask a question, Brian?
Sure.
So I understand what the plan is as a next step to talk to Joe about some of the issues raised, but can we put anything in place to communicate whatever feedback we get from Joe to the residents who've expressed concern?
Sure, absolutely. We can actually have your email addresses, so we can have, Mary, if you don't mind, kind of being the point person to make sure everyone that's raising concerns gets Joe's answers on this.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
She got this job because she can type.
Thank you.
She writes very well, not just types. Any other public comment? We're almost through the whole room. Next up is the consent agenda. Does anyone have any questions on this?
I'm sorry, I have to see what's in
This
this.
one seemed kind of a straightforward one this time. No, it was confusing budget
No,
transfers from Brenda.
That's fine.
So if there's no questions, I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Approval of contract 2016-30 with Planning and Development Advisors for consulting services.
So this is a contract with a consultant to begin the process of updating your comprehensive plan. We've talked about it at a previous meeting, but that's one of your main priorities, is to update the comprehensive plan, and this consultant will be able to walk you through that. There's one slight change on the resolution itself, and that is that it is not an appropriation from general fund contingency, but it's an appropriation from general fund surplus. Slightly different, but that's the money's coming out for this purpose.
Yeah, we obviously, I think all of us have Mark, and you did not get to meet with him, but you knew him from previous.
No, I didn't meet him. I have to say that I found the description of work to be totally unfathomable, meaning that I couldn't really follow what the steps and deliverables were. I understand what the end result is supposed to be, but I was very concerned about trying to understand how many meetings and how the meetings are organized. And if you just read what's in the list of activities, it's just not clear about what the process, the waterfall of deliverables is, and or steps, milestones, I guess I'd say. I understand there'll be a group of meetings. I'm looking at your sheets that you have it printed out here.
Yeah, here.
And thanks. So if you just go through services, it starts with meeting attendance of up to 12 meetings of the village board, other boards, committees. Who's driving that? Who decides what meetings he goes to? Are these meetings specifically geared to just see how the village operates, or is it geared toward asking questions about specific topics, or what? So to me, that just is very nebulous. Then you go to the next one, because it says after each meeting, a technical memorandum would be prepared, summarizing the topic, discussion, and next steps. Now, I assume maybe he's saying that this is not meeting with them in terms of watching their operation, but meeting with them to talk about specific topics. But I'm not sure from the description. And then there's public meetings and hearings, inclusive of the SECRA hearing, and that, I guess, is probably more understandable, considering that you want to get public input, and then you'll have subsequent meetings, and so forth. So anyways, I'm just a little bit...
You want some more specifics on?
Can I interject about something, and maybe it'll help answer your questions? So one of the things that we did discuss with this consultant, and actually both consultants that we met with along the way, is that in large part it's up to you all to figure out and decide what's most comfortable for you to go through the process of updating your plan. So this consultant and the others that we met with were not coming in to tell you how you should update it or what mechanism you should use to update it. There are some communities that would prefer to have a consultant drive the entire thing, work with a separately appointed land use committee or comprehensive plan committee, and then you wait for 18 months and you get a report back from that committee. That's one way of doing it. I got another way of doing it is that the board doesn't necessarily appoint one single comprehensive plan committee, but in fact may identify specific subcommittees to work on different areas that are in need of updating, and you act as kind of the central focus point. So that decision hasn't been made. I got the sense from previous meetings that we had, maybe one of which that you weren't at. So that.
No, but I was it's a couple of them, some discussions.
Yeah. So I got the sense from the board that you felt more comfortable about being kind of the hub and have the spokes of this be the various sections that you're updating, and not just turn it over to a committee and get a report 18 months later. That seemed to be not as comfortable, but that's something that you haven't all decided yet. And this proposal would be responsive to that either way. But I think when you have your first meeting with your consultant that will be newly hired, you'll make those decisions about where you're going with this.
All right, so I'm very, I was very confused by the first set of deliverables, the first paragraph, because it just seemed so ill-defined. I mean, it was just basically, it could be anything. So it could fit either, any of the descriptions that you're saying.
That's by definition, right.
I mean, just personally, I know that we've talked about it, and we've talked about how it was really important to probably speed this along by addressing specific areas of the comprehensive plan rather than doing a complete rework. So try to get a sense of where there are issues in the plan. So to me, before we can even make use of the consultant in an intelligent way, except maybe for his or her ability to offer professional advice, we have to collect, and this is probably what you're talking about, different types of processes, but we have to collect enough information to develop an opinion about what areas we think need to be addressed in the plan. I know we've had a rough cut of a few of them already,
Right.
but is that a final list? I don't know.
No, I don't think it's a final list, but it's certainly a good starting point. And I fully believe that meeting with your consultant will help you determine what your next steps are. It's not, I know it could be a cart before the horse, but I don't think it is in this case. I think that you need someone to guide, you need a professional to help guide you through this process and get you to feel comfortable.
I couldn't agree with you more.
And it may be different process for different areas. The example that we used in some of our discussions at work sessions and whatnot was that, if you're looking at modern code modernization, like dealing with things like Airbnb, do you have to convene a subcommittee of the community for that? Maybe not. Maybe you need some, cutting edge research done by a professional in those areas. On the other hand, if you're talking about, what's the future of Broadway going to look like, just picking a major thoroughfare, that's something you clearly want to have input from your community and really, have the momentum come from the community to begin with, and the consultant would work directly with maybe a subcommittee there. So there's different approaches for different areas, and none of those determinations have been made, but I think this proposal is responsive in that respect. It'll allow you to work your way through this process.
Okay, I mean, I understand. I'm just concerned about well, whatever, I guess, I'm just...
It is a little bit like a chicken and the egg thing.
Even the description where you're talking about that he would have to do research to come to us to answer questions doesn't really seem to fit into exactly any of these steps per se. I mean, they, not as, because existing conditions update is, that's, well, I don't know what I'm trying to say. It just seems like there's some pieces missing here. But if Larry, if you're comfortable that, because someone's got to oversee this process and blow a whistle if it's getting stalled, I guess that's my concern. If we're not getting any traction because somehow, right? So if you're comfortable that you think that that it's going to be on your lap, I think, to you and I guess Brian's lap to try to make this thing move.
I mean, it's all of you, frankly, and me, obviously.
I think we do definitely need to have a meeting, a work session where we
kick off.
Go through. I think it's, and again, I think you could probably debate if we have to kind of say initially what we think is important even before we talk to the consultant. But I think you could also make the case that having the consultant there as you go through it again helps, because I know we've been talking about the same kind of things, about the comprehensive plan. Most of it was completed. There's still some issues. There's some issues that weren't addressed. We're not sure why.
There's some new issues.
And then there's new issues that have, of course, come up in the last 14 years or whatever. So I think there's getting those buckets initially, kind of makes sense. I do think that the consultant has done enough of these or worked on enough of these that he kind of knows that he kind of understands the position we're in. It's not a, kind of unique position. So I think that his cost kind of includes that initial stage where we're kind of figuring out exactly what we need to do, and then kind of getting some recommendations on that. Obviously with our input of, as Larry said, is this something we can decide as a board on this piece, and then is there another piece that really needs a lot of public support? Is it separate meetings on weekends, whatever it is? I think that...
Well, I agree with what you're saying. I would actually feel comfortable if there was such thing as this hypothetical, but probably necessary kickoff meeting between the board and the consultant, just to try to go through and map out more of the areas and come to agreement on effectively what the scope of analysis is, not the scope of deliverables, but the scope of analysis. And but what I would like to see is two things to enable this. And one of them is I would love to see the consultant coming with his own list. He doesn't know us really, but he's seen a lot of.
Right. He knows what almost
and
best
he could
practices.
probably and he could probably go through and come up with his own short list of areas that he thinks might be of concern for us. So if we're in our meeting talking about what we see, he might also say,
It's going to get a fresh topic.
here's a couple more that you might want to consider. Do you want to consider? And that way, I feel like it's like getting a different set of eyes on the thing. So that's one thing I'd like to ask, that we have him. I mean, I'm sure that he would come up here, but would be important. And the other one is, how many of you all have comprehensive plan copies?
I just found mine, actually.
Maybe we should. You don't have one yet, do you? Yeah. Okay. So I'm pointing at Larry. Probably, I don't know where mine is, I hate to admit it, so maybe we need to just, without cutting down a bunch of trees, we should probably just take an inventory of how many we should get. Sure. If you would. So those are my 2 points.
Oh, it's an incredibly important job we're going to be doing in these months, and I know we need to pay close attention to how we set it up. So all this discussion is
I mean, obviously, obviously it resides with us, but I think getting input from our land use boards too is going to be very important.
Oh, it's going to be.
They obviously they see it in practice all the time, and where the shortfalls were,
So my reading of that first deliverable then of the 12 meetings is not that it's not going to see them in operation per se, it's actually going to them with specific issues. So it's like a working session with them.
That's right.
My sense of what he was in the conversation with him is that he was looking to provide us, and I saw this as exactly what we were looking for, a flexible document that allows a lot of wiggle room for how we want it to be, which members of the community, which boards, which other groups, and that these particular things are not necessarily in this order or stacked in a particular way, but just it would cover this range of activities.
Okay.
And I think,
within some time frame.
Yeah, he kind of said a year was kind of his rough ballpark of the whole thing, and he kind of had it, kind of first couple months for this, and I think that, that's an important deliverable within the first couple meetings, that you kind of get the time frame, nailed down, more than the kind of generic one.
Yeah, I think it's important to, once he gets the sense of what it is, to come back and echo a schedule to us about what kinds of meetings he thinks he's going to have, and what kind of milestone dates are going to be for things.
Yeah, I think we can even ask for that, as we kind of get him back his signed contract.
Well, we need to establish the scope better.
Yeah, right. I think that's right. That is a chicken and egg at that point.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, let's do it. Let's get this.
Let's get this
turkey on the road.
Resolved to approve the contract with Planning and Development Advisors for consulting services in conjunction with the updated village's comprehensive plan, and authorizing the village administrator to execute said agreement. And further resolved to authorize the clerk treasurer to transfer $50,400 from general fund surplus to cover the cost of said contract. I'll make a motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Approval of filming permit for Possible Productions, Inc.
They'll have rubber guns.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, some of the details they give us. So there's a production being filmed of all times tomorrow, but we have looked at it very closely. As you know, it's a production called Billions, which I think is on Showtime. If I understand.
It is,
I've seen it myself.
It's about a hedge fund.
Yeah, there you go.
A lot of money. Money.
First half of it is being done at a residence on Riverview Road, lower part. There'll be 2 police officers on hand to redirect traffic as needed, but shouldn't be that big of a problem there. The other part is on Main Street, which of course would immediately sound like there's an issue given the elections and the busy downtown that we expect to have. However, it is almost 95% of it is an interior shot, at Mima's. They'll be filming a scene inside Mima's with the windows blacked out and whatnot. There are a few parking spaces on North Ecker Street that will be dedicated to that. But beyond that, there won't be certainly any closures of Main Street or vehicles driving by or film crews out on the street, with the possible exception of later on in the evening, past 9 o'clock. They expect to have what they call an establishing shot, which is simply a shot from across the road, but that's after the polls close. So anyway, that's the film permit request.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the one concern we have here is the election going on, but, that was identified early on, and it's not like, as we discussed earlier, it's not like they're filming a police chase down Main Street all day and 50 takes. It's fairly contained, and they're very conscious that we're concerned about the potential to impede almost in any way, kind of voting. So I mean, I think we've raised it with them, and it's not like we're just going to let them do what they have to do. We're going to be there to supervise.
We have officers on hand at both locations. So.
They're discussing contacting the close neighbors.
They
That
have.
would be you, Brian, I think.
I'm actually too far up the road, but
Oh.
so far the only feedback I've gotten is everyone's happy because they're paying people to use their driveways to park cars. So I was thanked by several.
So they've been in touch.
They've been in touch with them.
And
they
even though
eventually-
they have rubber guns, that's not a problem.
No, and they don't, rubber guns don't fire, which is good. But they also, they posted up and down Main Street as well as on Riverview Road on telephone poles that this is happening, so they trying to alert people as well. So.
And you were howling with that Hudson, huh?
Yeah. Actually, I like the show. It's not a lot of shows about hedge funds, so. Although he, of course, is the bad guy.
He was John Adams, Paul Deere.
Yes, and he's actually the United States Attorney.
Yeah.
For New York.
Okay.
Which the former one lives in Irvington. A former one lives in Irvington as well, which is all right. Resolved to approve a filming permit for possible productions for filming at various locations on November 8, 2016, for a permit fee of $5,000. I'll make the motion. Have a second.
Second.
All in favor? Volunteer appointment to the Irvington Woods Committee. Joe asked, did we do this? And no one objected. Everyone's happy to have her on board. Resolved to appoint Dana Sabatino as a member of the Irvington Woods Committee for a term to expire December 2016. I guess it's a whole year.
A month.
Yes, it's a whole month, but I'll make the motion. Have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
So what do we do in that case? It's almost absurd, so then you just...
Let's roll it.
They roll it into
Does
the
she have to sign the
organizational
same
meeting.
paperwork a second time around?
It's just an oath of office, that's all. The first time around, it's an ethics code and...
Yeah, blood test and everything.
No, none of that. But just the oath of office, so
it's simpler.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, I think she's from the family that did a lot of work helping to expose the problem at Halsey Pond.
Yep.
Next is to appoint Tom Thacker as a member of the Irvington Housing Committee for a term to expire in 2016. I'll say resolved. I said the whole thing. It was Connie's appointment, so I assume you're not going to object.
No.
Would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I would.
Someone like to second it? All in favor?
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Dana.
Designation of Westchester County to administer the provisions of the Fair and Affordable Housing article in the Irvington zoning code. Larry?
Okay, so the Fair and Affordable Housing chapter of the Village Code that you enacted several years ago does provide for an agency to be responsible for the administrative and monitoring aspects of the Fair and Affordable Housing section. The Board of Trustees is the entity that's responsible for it, or its designee. So these types of responsibilities would include making sure that the marketing plan is followed properly, making sure that the income levels of the individuals who do end up either purchasing or residing in the housing are within the proper guidelines and that they're updated on an annual basis, et cetera. So there are a number of different administrative responsibilities and monitoring, and the board, the recommendation here is for the board to designate the County of Westchester to do that function. The County of Westchester then has a subcontractor, so to speak, the Housing Action Council, that would be responsible for those functions. The cost of the monitoring and following the marketing plan and all of that needs to be paid for by the developer of any particular set of units that qualify as fair and affordable. And that's worked out directly between the developer and the county's subcontractor, essentially. So the first step in doing, the only step in doing that is what you're being asked to do tonight, which is to simply designate the County of Westchester as that agency responsible, which I think you would be happy to do.
So this is not taking...
Right. And I would say that we're very familiar with Housing Action and work closely with them, and the Housing Committee particularly is very familiar with the director.
Right. So I'm sorry, Mark.
That's all right. I was just going to say, I'm assuming this is not taking any legislative or, zoning function away from the village or village boards in any way, right? This is purely the operation of finding and maintaining residencies or residents in the properties.
The code, maybe this will help, but the code actually reads, the Village Board of Trustees or its designee shall administer the requirements of this article, being the fair and affordable housing article, and, among other things, be responsible for monitoring the fair and affordable housing units during the unit's period of affordability, and for monitoring compliance with the income and eligibility requirements and affirmative marketing responsibilities that are applicable to those units.
And how?
50 years.
Yes.
So
we won't all be here.
So I guess the other question was, and now I hear what Connie was saying, but I'm just wondering, has Westchester County been, fair in its dealings? There have been a lot of problems caused by some of the Astorino budget cuts in the last number of years, and so are we looking at a situation where we're going to have a problem with Westchester County and the funding of the Housing Action Committee, or in your estimation, or is this something that's kind of, for want of a better word, sacrosanct because of the the HUD issue and all that?
Well, we did not hear any issue from the director, who did speak with the committee, but maybe someone else knows more about that than I do. Didn't seem to be a concern that was brought up, that somehow the contract wouldn't be supported, or
But we have the right to redesignate any time.
right, we could change, right?
You still hold the...
Yeah.
So I mean, if we
Right,
find
I
out,
don't know any other,
Group.
any other person or agencies that's doing it.
Yeah, I mean, you
I'm
can...
not saying that. I'm just wondering
Well,
if you're.
if you want to do it yourself, I mean, that's the choice. I mean, and as
Well, actually,
the
I'm not
experience
even.
the experience has been good. I know in other places, and Hastings has worked very well.
But I'm allowed to talk about my own concerns, especially in light of the last few years of how the Astorino administration has been dealing with budgets, especially in social services areas and environmental areas and public planning areas. So what makes this one sacrosanct from?
They have to. They know it's.
Well, that,
I don't think
I
we're-
don't think it is.
Well, but I don't think we're suggesting that it is. I think that this is an agency which exists now and is being funded currently by the county and funded directly by the developers going
Right.
forward. And to the extent that that falls apart at some point in the future for whatever reason, we make a different decision. I mean, it's our responsibility, your responsibility ultimately, and you're designating that right
Yes,
now.
because
And
we
we're
don't have the
designating it to...
We don't have the expertise to do that. So.
Oh, no, I mean, look, if this was White Plains, you'd have a housing department, or you'd have a planning department that might handle something like this, but that's clearly not the case here, as it is with probably 99% of the communities in Westchester.
Okay. Thank you.
Resolved to designate the County of Westchester as the agency responsible for administering the requirements of Article 18, Fair and Affordable Housing of the Village Zoning Code. I'm sorry, 28, Fair and Affordable Housing. Roman numerals. No, Super Bowls. Of the Village Zoning Code. I'll make the motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Approving the removal of parking spaces on Broadway, north of the driveway to 30 South Broadway, reconfiguration of municipal parking area number 7, and installation of a sidewalk on the north side of Station Road. It's a big sentence there.
Big resolution. I talked to the board briefly about this. You know, I think that if I read through the resolution, it'll kill two birds with one stone. I think the resolution's pretty self-explanatory. And at any point, stop me. And just by way of background, at the last planning board meeting last Wednesday, they did approve the site plan approval and the various wetlands, watercourses, floodplain, subdivision, final subdivision approval of the 3040 South Broadway project. And one of the conditions, 15, 20 conditions, but one of them was that this board approve the reconfiguration of the parking lot, removal of the parking spaces on Broadway, and the installation of the sidewalk on Station Road. But I'll read through this and then stop me at any point. Whereas DiNardo Capital Corporation applied to the Irvington Planning Board for site development plan approval of a 27-unit townhouse development at 3040 South Broadway in accordance with the village's recently amended regulations for the multifamily residence district. And then these next 3 paragraphs relate to the elimination of the parking spaces. Whereas the planning board's traffic consultant, AKRF, recommended that 5 parking spaces be eliminated on the west side of Broadway, just north of the intersection with the driveway to 30 South Broadway, in order to improve sight distance of the driveway and from the driveway. And whereas the New York State Department of Transportation agreed with this recommendation, whereas the planning board also agreed with the recommendation and made the removal of the parking spaces, subject to the approval of the Board of Trustees, a condition of site development plan approval of the DiNardo project. One other overall thing I should have said is that the planning board can't approve things related to the streets and parking because that's just in the jurisdiction of the Board of Trustees. And then the next paragraphs relate to replacement parking spaces. Whereas in order to provide public parking to replace the 5 spaces being removed, DiNardo proposed to create 6 additional parking spaces in municipal parking area number 7, which is on the east side of Broadway off of Fairpoint Drive. I'll refer to it as parking lot 7. By eliminating the parallel spaces on the east side of the lot and replacing them with angled spaces. We would have seen that on the drawing you got. AKRF reviewed the proposal and made recommendations that were incorporated in the revised scheme for parking lot 7, which scheme AKRF approved. The newly created parking spaces are all at least 9 feet wide to accommodate full-size cars as requested by the planning board. An earlier version had slightly undersized spaces. They were compact spaces because the ones on the other were compact spaces, but the planning board urged them to be full width. The reconfigured parking lot would project 2.5 feet into the landscaped area between the parking lot and Broadway, and therefore require the removal of several trees, as well as the removal of a tree on the east side of the parking lot. Lucille Munz, the village's landscape consultant, reviewed the proposed scheme for parking lot 7, including the replacement trees to be planted, and in a staff report dated September 3rd, 2016, wrote the proposed tree replacements will be an improvement overall, and removing the poor quality trees will provide for healthier native species. The planning board made the reconfiguration of parking lot 7, again subject to the approval of the Board of Trustees, a condition of site development plan approval of the DiNardo project. And that parking lot proposal would require a temporary easement from the Fairpoint Community Association, which already voted to enter into the agreement with DiNardo. And then these last relate to the new sidewalk. Whereas the planning board requested DiNardo to install a sidewalk running along the north side of Station Road from Broadway to the property line of the old Croton Aqueduct, and DiNardo agreed to do that. The planning board conducted a site walk to determine that the sidewalk would be workable at that location. The plans first submitted by DiNardo proposed a 3-foot wide sidewalk, but the planning board requested that it be 4 feet in width, and DiNardo changed it to a 4-foot wide sidewalk. The proposed sidewalk would be installed in the village-owned right-of-way. The planning board made installation of the sidewalk subject to the approval of the board of trustees, a condition of site plan approval of the DiNardo project. And then, now therefore be it resolved to approve the removal of 5 parking spaces on Broadway, just north of the driveway to 37th Broadway, to approve the reconfiguration of parking lot 7, general titled Hill Municipal Parking Area Number 7, conceptual modification sketch, which you got here in your packet, and to approve the installation of the sidewalk on the north side of Station Road from Broadway to the property line of the old Croton Aqueduct. Questions?
Yeah. You know what, I'm just trying to understand, Marion, where the sidewalk is, so where the house is now, on the corner of Station Road and Broadway? Yeah. Are we talking about a sidewalk in front of that house?
Yeah, it's gonna run from there to the tunnel.
Okay.
So on the opposite side of the street from Station Road Park, yeah.
Okay. But can you just remind me, but that house is being preserved though, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That house isn't changing at all, except that the one change that'll be there is there's a pretty big parking area now. It'll be made small. It'll be a smaller parking area. But otherwise, the house is not.
Mark, I know you talked somewhat about the planting and some things like that.
Well, I'm just a little concerned because we're selling, we're signing off on something where we don't have a final planting plan. We have a final reconfiguration plan or something close to it for the parking area, and we know what's going to have to be removed. And frankly, a lot of the material is not that good of condition. But the issue, I have a couple issues with it, one of which is that that's a major visual area for the village. People sort of go by it and they don't really think about it because right now it's just, some of it is scrubby stuff, some of it is nice shrubs, some of it, there's a few nice spruces, and so it becomes a visual backdrop of green, shall we say, and you don't see the parking lot unless you really look into it, then you see the parking area more clearly. And so what I'm concerned about is that I don't think it can be like a one-for-one replanting. You take a tree out, you put a new tree in. I think we have to try to do whatever we can to spruce that, make sure that area is spruced up, and make sure that there's sufficient planting being put in, that it doesn't just look denuded for the next 5 years. And that brings up a couple of other points, one of which is that, and I'm assuming, because I think this is what I remember from hearing in the resolution, but at the planning board, but there has to be a performance bond for this planting and a three-year performance window for it or something, I think is what was discussed.
Well, the performance bond was really, it was for the planting in the Broadway buffer and around the setbacks of the property.
Oh, so we have no performance bond set at all for this, for the.
That wasn't part of the resolution.
All right, so then I have major problems with this, because I don't believe that our DPW is necessarily should be tasked with ensuring that these plants survive. We're doing something that's a benefit to the developer, and I think that it shouldn't become the village's responsibility to ensure the fact that the establishment of the plants, and our standard way of dealing with that has been a 3-year performance bond where materials are replaced 100% on failure.
Well, then you can make that a condition of your approval.
Well, thank you. I'm saying it should be. Right? And but that was so.
Because it wasn't raised before. But you could put it in.
Right. I think because this is, I mean, I would do anything I think it's a great project, and I'm not, the Marker Ridge is a great project. I'm glad to see something finally happening up there. And I'm very happy to see all the green space being saved in 40 South Broadway and the sidewalk going in. But I think we do have to watch out. There's going to be a lot of backlash if people see this area get up along South Main get denuded, and then what goes back in is just, a couple of scrawny trees. It's not going to play well.
I think, I have no objection to adding a performance bond for the maintenance bond on the across the street there either. And I also wouldn't mind, Mark, if you wanted to meet with Lucille and review the findings as well. But I mean, I do think that we've had our landscape consultant, kind of come up with a plan.
And I actually called her today to ask, could more trees be put in? And she said, and you should understand this in the context of, she was very demanding of the landscaping on this site, on the 40 South Broadway. And I specifically had asked her to go look at, before this, before they got the approval, to look at the park for the area to see was it work. And so she looked at that specifically. Now, when I talked to her today, she said what they're removing is of no real quality or value for the most part. That there's 5 deciduous trees there that are coming out, and 4 are in very poor condition. She thought there was 1 tree of some value, but that's not actually on the Broadway side. It's on the east side of the parking lot. And she didn't really think there was space for more trees. The one thing she thought, if you did want to tweak it, is that I think they have 4 big trees or 4 trees being replaced on the Broadway side, that you could suggest that they be 8 smaller trees, flowering trees, and that might be. That was the one tweak she thought of, because she said it would be, really hard to find space to put any more trees in there.
Well, I don't know exactly where it stops, but I do know that there's, for instance, there's 3 blue spruce trees that are on the north side of that, that are not even shown on here, so they may be outside of the work area. But one of the problems with those, I mean, they appear to be perfectly healthy. One of the problems is that they've been limbed up over time, so they no longer perform a screening function. So, kind of a solution for some of that would be increased screening by having understory planting, i.e. some shrubs that would go in there. So I don't know if that's being described, but to me, just putting trees in, especially deciduous flowering trees, it might look good in the springtime, but then here in the fall and winter, you have stable visibility into the parking lot. So there, in some areas, there are understory screening. Some of the stuff has been lost. There used to be a whole hedge line of large Rhododendron maximus, I think, and those are no longer there because they're either died in a drought or got damaged by deer. And there's a line of arborvitae that were planted, I don't know when and by who, I assume by DPW, but a young arborvitae, which I think have only been there for less than a year, that I know was mentioned that the recommendation was to dig them up and move them and replant them. The problem is that arborvitae is deer food, so putting them back in the spot where there's heavy deer activity, and Field Point has heavy deer activity, is probably not going to be successful to maintain screening. So I know there's one species of arborvitae that is supposedly deer resistant, and I think it's very dependent upon, that's up for grabs. I've put it in multiple client sites where it has not been deer resistant. So my sense is just that we need to make sure that my key thing is make sure that we get screening, sufficient screening for 4 seasons, not just for a nice look during the summertime, And secondly, that we get a maintenance bond in place so that we can guarantee, so the village doesn't have to take the overhead, because I'm sure the DPW folks just, filling watering bags is not their bailiwick. They have done it, but they do it reliably? I don't know. And so, we're talking about a 2 to 3 year establishment period where you have to, especially this year, the watering bags hadn't been filled for some of the street trees that were planted. They would be, would be dead by now because of the drought. So those are my concerns.
So if we have this bond, this the maintenance bond, does that mean it all has to go back to the planning board again?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Because it could be a condition of your approval.
Okay. And Mark, would you meet with Lucille, or you just want her to hear what you said?
I don't want to.
Okay.
I've inserted myself as far as I feel comfortable.
Okay.
I think that she's a professional, and I generally don't disagree with what she's presented in the past. I just think in this case, there may have to be just a heightened awareness that, sensitivity to the screening aspect of things. The other thing is, we don't want it to look denuded. Maybe we need to make sure that if you put in an evergreen, you're putting in 12 to 14 foot evergreen rather than an 8 to 10 foot or something. In other words, you go in with a slightly more mature, there's a balance there for what it takes because of your narrow space and what you can get in there, and so forth. But, if she hears that, if it's communicated to her, which I'm sure it will be, that we're concerned about maintaining as much screening as possible, and that's a real goal, then I think that's all that's required.
How about inserting this language after dated 10/19/16? Subject to approval of a final planting plan that provides year-round screening from Broadway to be approved by the village's landscape consultant and subject to posting a 3-year maintenance bond.
That sounds perfect.
That's great.
Thank you.
So,
Adam Stevens.
well, one second. So then I'll just I think you can vote on it tonight, but I'll just retype it and send it over. And I'll let them know. I'll let DiNardo know, and I'll let Lucille know. I'm sure it won't be a problem.
Does the subject to change anything as far as the subject to of the planning board? In other words,
No.
the planning board resolution was subject to this board's determination.
Right. Yeah. It's not going to be a problem,
Okay.
especially since under the planning board's resolution, one of the conditions was that their final landscaping be subject to Lucille's approval, because there were some more changes she recommended, so it won't be a problem. It can just be.
Rolls into that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think it'll be a problem.
Okay.
Take care of it.
That's fine.
Okay.
All right.
I just had one quick question about the sidewalk on Station Road. I'm not privy to any drawings that, you may have already had. But I'm sure that you're aware that the walking path through Station Road is on the other side of the road. So people walking on the sidewalk are going to have to look into the tunnel and then cross in front of the tunnel to then walk on the path, unless that's changed. And I'm just not sure.
The tunnel path, you mean?
Yeah. So it's on the opposite side of where the sidewalk's going to be.
Right.
And I also know that they're trying to talk about some larger scale project to make everything safer on Station Road in the tunnel. And, is this being considered in context of something that can then go on beyond? Is there any way of knowing that at the end of that sidewalk, what the view would be for someone to look into the tunnel to see if there are actually cars coming? Because if you're on the other side right now, you certainly can't. You have to almost put yourself within harm's way to see if a car's coming in the first place. So I don't know what the view is.
I can't help you on it because the sidewalk was nothing I paid that much attention to,
Right,
except on paper, but I know the planning board did go out and do a sidewalk. It was specifically about the sidewalk. And I'm assuming that was
Just because I know, again, if there's a larger scale.
only because there did not seem to be any dispute about it or any discussion, and I know it was something they focused on when they went
Good. I
outside.
think at 4 feet wide, I think that'll be.
And I did think we also talked about potentially moving the walkway inside.
In the internal.
The
Yeah,
tunnel walkway.
We don't know that yet because it
Right, and then of course,
remains to
what's
be seen
happening
what's.
inside of where the other side.
And we don't know what's happening on the other side. So.
Yeah, we have to.
It just wanted to ask.
It's all
But
up
it
in
is
there.
true, I think, Larry, that your point is very true, that it's nearly impossible on the east side of the tunnel. The way most people walk, are walking on the south side of the, and they come up to the playground and then across the pump house or whatever it is now, and then across Alice's property, and then they're right there, and they're on a slope of land, and there's no way to see. And, bottom line, it seems to me that there should be some way to kind of, whatever they do at the end of the sidewalk.
Well, if they do a bump out, I don't know if it goes into the street, but just a bump out, that's still part of the sidewalk that
To allow
allows you
them to see.
Peek
to
in.
look in. Yeah.
Yeah. But I guess that's all gonna be part of the final design, right?
Wasn't there just some discussion about if a pedestrian were standing there, it could initiate a light that would stop the car?
We did talk about it, and you could have it also for the cars.
Yeah, that it would,
hit a
like,
button.
there's a thing, and then it activates.
You mean like a stop?
So that,
Stoplight on either side of the, yeah, we definitely talked about it, but I don't think that was part of this proposal.
No, that's something that.
so it's,
That's step 2. Maybe it's part of the other sidewalk on the other side.
But I do think it's something to keep in mind. I'm sorry, thank you, Larry, for bringing it up, because I know we did talk about, it gets awkward when it's the best place for the sidewalk, if you try and put it on the south side, it just doesn't work.
No, it won't go on the south side
And
because it'll take up.
So then you've still got the problem when you come to the tunnel entrance.
but is it overall an advantage to have a sidewalk? I guess, you'd have to say yes. I mean, without a doubt, having no sidewalk choice at all for that whole stretch has been a horrible problem, so, for solving one, but not all, and I think enough people are aware of the next layer of problem that does need to be solved.
Well, also, people can potentially walk on that sidewalk up to Broadway, where there are sidewalks. So, it's.
You can go all the way around and not go through
No,
the tunnel.
depending on where you're going, but the sidewalk would be, a net benefit, I think, just.
Oh, of course, yeah.
I think it's a really good thing to get this sidewalk in place. I'm very glad that it's part of the project.
So I guess I'll make a motion to approve the resolution as amended.
Yes,
Second?
don't read it all over
No.
again.
Can I have a second?
Second.
I won't read it. Can I get a quick second?
Second,
All in
second.
favor?
Aye.
Excellent.
Thank you, Mark, for your input on the screening.
I'm just trying to avoid the board getting yelled at.
We appreciate that. Future meetings. Especially Larry. Approval of contract 2016-28 for services related to the fire department pumper specifications. Mr. Shopper.
Sure. So this is a contract that's being proposed in anticipation of the replacement of engine 178. Engine 178 is on the capital plan for replacement in 2017-18. It was an engine that was delivered not long before I got here, actually, 1992-93. So, am I looking at the right thing? I'm sorry. Sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. Let me try and skip one.
There you go.
Yeah, so the fire department is taking a very responsible approach in their design of this fire truck and the specifications, and they're engaging the services of an outside designer to do this, rather than engaging the services of a truck manufacturer, which is often done in this field.
I think it's the most common way to do it.
In fact, it may have been done in truck 178, as a matter of fact. So they are using an outside consultant. We did successfully do this the last truck we purchased, the most recent one that we purchased, and I think it's a good way to go. This consultant will work with a subcommittee of fire department members and establish an open set of specifications that will, the goal of which is to yield as many competitive bids as possible. That's the key. That's it.
So this is the same one we've worked with, the same?
No, it's a different one.
A different one?
Different one. We've used a consultant like this in the past.
And were there others that we looked at and we found this one, or was it the
No,
one that
this
they
is
knew about? Or?
directly recommended by the fire department.
And where are they? Their name of it?
That they've been looked at, vetted, I mean, they,
Not by me. The fire department did. They came highly recommended from other agencies that used them.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Review the bids. Actually, what am I missing? The name of the company?
It's on the
Emergency
logo.
vehicle response.
The name, okay.
It
It's
sounds like a
EVR, Emergency Vehicle Response
It's a
is
bit
the name of the
It sounds,
company.
it's the name of the company, it sounds like it's the
Yeah, it
function,
does, that's
but
what was confusing me, okay. Emergency Vehicle Response.
It doesn't say where they're located.
They shall be responsible for developing a set of bidding specifications, okay. Okay, I get it, we get it, sorry.
As soon as they'll be working in conjunction with a truck committee from the fire department anyway. So they work with them, but yeah, as Larry kind of said, there's not that many different fire truck manufacturers, but there's enough that creating an open bid can save a considerable amount of money, because small percentage is a lot of money on a fire truck, so.
Also, it's probably good not to get too much custom stuff on the truck if you're going to keep your price down.
Yeah.
And then it
Company's based
comes
in
back to us
Based
after.
where? Virginia?
They're based in Virginia, by the way. It's worth it.
Then this all comes back to us, once they have a choice, and we,
Oh, to award the bid? Oh,
Right,
absolutely,
yes.
sure.
yes, okay.
This is essentially like hiring an architect. You know, they're doing the specifications, but they happen to specialize in fire truck design, which is not very common.
Okay, get it.
Spend a little upfront, hopefully save a lot in the end. Resolved to approve contract 2016-28 with Emergency Vehicle Response for the preparation of specifications for the Irvington Fire Department new pumper, including follow-up work, and to authorize the village administrator to execute said contract subject to review by the village attorney. I'll make the motion. Can I have a second? All in favor? Sorry, we had not quite an enthusiastic response, but enough to carry it.
Who's the fire department liaison?
It was me. Not much longer.
You got seconded that.
Award of contract 2016-26 for two 2017 F-350 satellite dump body trucks for the Irvington Department of Public Works. And this was out of our capital budget, Larry?
Yes, correct. So, straightforward bid. We had two bidders. Low bid being Schultz Ford, which is actually the same price as the previous year's model, so it's...
Look at
Is
that.
this the same thing that comes like with air conditioning and DVD player and everything else, because it's cheaper to have it all in the cab than to take it out?
I don't remember exactly what the specifications were.
No, I
to be
don't think
honest
they
with
are
you.
in the specs, but I think it's kind of like it's thrown in because
Yeah, I mean, it's a base package.
Yeah.
We don't have a luxury package.
we don't
Sure
have
you-
satellite radio, in other words.
Not with a subscription, no.
Do you know what the lifetime of these, we've talked about this before, what's the lifetime of these trucks?
I'd have to look back at the capital plan. Is it 8 to 10 years? It's probably 10.
Or say 10.
Yeah, in that vicinity.
So these are really the ones being
They
replaced?
take
are
good
really
care of
that
them, it
Yeah.
just depends how,
Yep.
they don't replace them unless they need to.
Yeah.
So the satellite dump body truck. What,
These are the white V-shaped looking
Okay.
backs.
It's the one that collects the recycling typically.
yep, there it is.
Satellite truck.
The small one that
Collects
dumps into the
satellites.
bigger one,
Yes,
yeah, that's what I thought.
Any
They
thoughts
have
on
to,
it?
lift those bags and push them over the top. It's still pretty hard to do with that nice equipment.
Right,
Not
but
an
we
easy
send
job.
them around to locations that you can't send a full
Yeah,
garbage truck
right,
into.
I see them right on our street, but, anyway, okay.
Whereas sealed bids were received and opened on November 2nd, 2016 at 11 a.m. at Village Hall as follows. Schultz Ford Lincoln from Nanuet had a total bid of $77,790, and Gabrielli Truck Sales from Hicksville had a $82,570 bid. Whereas the village administrator reviewed the bid submitted and determined that the bid from the low bidder is in order and responsive to the specifications. Now therefore be it resolved that the clerk treasurer is authorized to issue a purchase order in the amount of two 2017 F-350 satellite dump body trucks from Schultz Ford Lincoln in the amount of $77,790. I'll make the motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Just one other question, because it just occurred to me. Are these things that common, that they're of a configuration that, it just seems to me that it would be custom metal work or something to get the rear.
Yeah, no, the body is I don't remember the exact specifications, but it didn't have to be described in much more than a model number and a style number for the actual body itself that's going on the back.
A lot of munis using these.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a custom item.
Approval of contract 2016-21 with AB Design Inc. for wayfinding services.
So this contract that's being recommended is actually, it's associated with the Town Hall Theater Plaza grant project that we have, but also has, it's a project that was recommended as part of the Main Street Streetscape Plan, and that is that the village should design standardized signage for a variety of different types of signs, the likes of which I won't go through now, but the bottom line is it's to come up with a language, with a vernacular for what we're using in terms of signage, and to bring together, bring it all together in a cohesive manner. So we are using a consultant to assist us with that. The consultant's contract is largely funded by a grant. There probably will be a small portion that's not, or that could roll over into an alternate grant as well, the Aqueduct Crossing. So it's all something that needs to come together before certain types of signage and even certain types of even bulletin boards and other things that you've talked about over the years. Rather than do it on a haphazard basis, you'll be doing it on a kind of a coordinated fashion.
And I think both Mark and I read all the submittals, and Larry read them. I'm not sure. It's very interesting.
Yeah, no, we received 4 very thoughtful proposals, and it's not a huge contract, so this is, I mean, it's not a 6-figure contract by any means. So, but the competition was good, and some very thoughtful proposals, and I think this particular one rose to the top in all of our estimations.
So Larry, I noticed that they're not canceled out of their proposal was the management of implementation.
Right. Yeah, and that I did that in discussion with them, and just thinking about this in a larger context. I don't think the intention of bringing this consultant on was to approach this as though we are going to buy all the signs in one big project, order them, ship them, have them all installed in a matter of a few days and be done with it. That's a situation where they may be here to oversee that process.
Right.
So we took that phase, the bidding phase out of it, and the implementation or construction phase out of it. How it gets implemented, I'm not sure at this point.
Piecemeal.
I think it'll be, some of it will be piecemeal. Yeah, and so I didn't want to lock ourselves into fees that were associated with doing it all at once, because frankly, we don't have a budget appropriation to handle the installation of the signage all at once. I think it will be done in connection with some of these other projects.
Areas won't be ready for the sign until they're ready. So
it's a different type of project. That's why that was removed.
The only question I had was, because you didn't put it in your description, but I seem to remember that they were going to advise us about where they thought where different types of signage should go. So there's also sort of a placement recommendation.
Yes, I'm sure that's in there.
Because I know that
scope,
because I know that the streetscape had some very some general recommendations, but it seemed like it needed to get really nailed down based on specific signage where things are recommended to go.
Yes. Yeah, the streetscape project was not intended to be a sign implementation guide.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I, for one, would love to see this, so we don't, even though it might be implemented piecemeal in terms of time frame. I just like it when the design isn't piecemeal.
It's a roadmap, absolutely.
Couldn't agree with you more.
Determine final sign types, layout, size, and location.
Yeah,
It's
so good.
It's a hard thing, and there are professionals who know how to do it.
Any other questions? Resolved to approve the contract with AB Design Inc. for the planning and design of a wayfinding signage system for the Village of Irvington. The focus on the village's business district and authorizing the village administrator to execute said agreement. Someone like to make a motion?
So moved.
Someone second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Reports of boards, standing committees, and officers. Trustee liaison reports. Mr. Gilliland.
I don't really have too much tonight. I know that for the tree commission, Alan is, ensconced as chair at this point, and they've been meeting and moving forward on permit reviews and other related things, replat agreements and verifications and whatnot. They're always looking for someone or someones who might be interested in sharing the husbandry of the village tree canopy. And you don't have to be a certified arborist to get involved, but you probably do need to know something about plants. And then, let's see what else. The traffic committee is meeting tomorrow morning early. I think we're all supposed to vote ahead of time, but I don't know. And we're going to be reviewing stuff to come together with that updated recommendations to the village, to Larry, based on what's been done and the public hearing input that we had from last month and so forth. And that's about it.
All right.
Okay, so the mayor mentioned the turkey trot on the 20th at 1:30. The O'Hara Foundation Thanksgiving lunch has been scheduled for Monday, November 21st at 11:30 at the Senior Center. The Thanksgiving Day home delivery program will take place on Thursday, November 24th, Thanksgiving Day. If you know of a family or individuals in need of a meal and a visit on Thanksgiving Day, please reach out to the rec department and let us know. We're grateful to have a co-sponsor for the program, which is the Kopp family and koppconstruction.com. Laura Copeman or Giorgino have more information on that. I have to say I'll never forget that program. I think the first time I did it was right after I had been elected, and it's one of the defining characteristics of Irvington that we have something like that. RPAC is meeting on Wednesday, November 16th, next Wednesday at 7:30 at the Rec Center on Main Street. Irvington Woods Committee is meeting on next Thursday at 7 p.m. at the O'Hara Nature Center. New members are still needed. Thank you to everyone who joined us for the annual hayride. And a big thank you goes to Maureen DePauli and her staff, and the Irvington Face Committee for their support. The Dogs on Leash program from Madison Park has been extended through March 30th, 2017. Just as a reminder, participants can bring their dogs into the park. Dogs can bring their humans into the park whenever it's open, unless otherwise noted. Current participants need to have tags. George knows more information on that. Thank you to the Irvington Fire Company for their sponsorship of the parade on Sunday, October 30th. Although the ring cut things short, we still distributed all 1,500 bags that were made on both Sunday and Monday. Members of the company gave out what was left over on Halloween night. The Irvington Woods Committee and RPAC would like to remind people that dogs must be on leash while on the Irvington trails. There's still room in many of our programs for youth and adults. Please take a look at the brochure. It's also time for auto ball sign up. Please note that the weather keeps getting colder, and as such, the bathrooms in Scenic Hudson, Matheson, and Memorial Parks will be closing soon. We'll post an email when they will be closed. All park users are asked to please not feed the geese in our parks. And I just wanted to wish good luck to mostly our local candidates tomorrow. Only.
Okay, so the Farmers Market Committee, I have a note from Ellen Passoff, who chairs that committee, that they have 2 markets left now, The last market is the Sunday before Thanksgiving and coincides with the turkey trot. So they are working with Joe to make sure that the potatoes don't run into the turkeys or whatever. And then she has an important note here that they're going to have an indoor market 8 times during the winter, 2 each in January, February, March, and April. So these markets will be indoors at the Main Street School in the auditorium. Now, they have done this before when they've had the Thanksgiving market. So, and they're going to be on Saturdays from 9 to 1. And they'll alternate weeks with Hastings Market. She mentions that a number of the farmers now use hoop houses, so there will be fresh greens available in addition to meat, fish, cheese, and other kinds of things that they have there, breads, coffees. We have about 25 vendors lined up. We're still finalizing details, but the school and school district have been supportive, and they're very excited to be doing this. So that's good information, and we thank that committee for doing all that. So that's the Farmers Market Committee. The Housing Committee, Janice was part of our housing presentation. The Housing Committee presented on Sunday, and Janice was one of our speakers. And it was very useful, helpful. It was called, just so that you know that all this material will be online when we get all the PDFs to Larry. They're going to all be findable online, but the program on Sunday that you can keep an eye out for online is called Strategies for Coping with Property Tax Shock. So we had a lot of information about ways in which the financial burden of some residents that occurred because of the tax increase, ways in which they could be either mitigated or dealt with. And we had almost 30 people there. And it was, I'll let Janice speak a little bit to it, but just I would say to people, if you didn't get there and you're very interested in that issue, things are not yet up on the website yet because we'll have to get the video back, but there will be a way, which we'll announce probably in an e-blast to look at that at your leisure. Janice, did you just want to add another note about that since you were a main part of that?
It was really a terrific effort by the current Housing Committee to pull this together, and it provided both information about what kind of tax exemptions might still be available to people, and overall understanding by John Wallen from the New York State Office of Real Property Taxes of how these taxes are set, what people's options are now that they've gone through the initial reassessment phase, and then pros and cons of reverse mortgages. It was actually reverse mortgages and home equity, but the gentleman from Westchester Residential Opportunities shared with us that he didn't really know very much about home equity, but he was very knowledgeable about reverse mortgages. This is one way of trying to deal with increased tax, the bigger tax bill. And then what I spoke about with the things that we had developed in the Housing Committee when I was a member, accessory apartments, in-law apartments, and also the long-standing ability to rent out a room in one's house to boarders. It was very well received. One of the things that struck me was this was not, it represented a pretty broad spectrum of community residents. It was not just senior citizens. There was a lot of different people who seemed to be interested in different parts or aspects of it. So, as Connie said, the material will all be available online. Lots of information. We tried, for example, with housing, generating income from your home, the different housing options. There's a one-pager that has what these different things are, what the requirements are, so you can quickly see if any of these apply to you.
Okay, so that's the Housing Committee. Their next meeting is November 29th. The Historic District Committee is working away on the projects that you're quite familiar with since they've been here at the board. Their guide document is the main thing that's getting finalized with photographs and a couple of little paragraphs. And I think they will be back in December. And the theater has some projects going on. The film, just looking for Greg's email to me, Greg Allen, about that. It's this weekend is the film series, the shorts. But if I let Janice speak for a minute, I will, and then I'll find that and come back to me. Okay.
Okay, so I should go on.
You should go ahead, and then I'll tell you about what is at the theater this weekend.
Okay, Water Department has been reading water meters, maintaining water department properties, raising the curb stop valve boxes for curbing and draining project on Hudson Avenue and Park Avenue, replacing the fire pump and Legend Hollow pump station, installing Storks fittings on fire hydrants for the IFD, jetted sewers on Main Street in East Sunnyside and Riverview, replaced broken fire hydrant in Richmond Hill, and repaired broken sewer pipe on East Sunnyside Lane in 2 places. Again, as is always the case with the water department and the building department, these lists are always a combination of regular projects and emergencies that come up and have to be fixed when they do. So some of this cannot always be anticipated. And the highway department was continuing the Hudson View Park curb replacement and drainage, repairing winter equipment, assisted the water department with the sewer break that I just talked about, installing new signs and new crosswalks per the traffic committee, line and crosswalk painting, and cleaning the catch basins with the backhaul.
Oh dear, no, it's from Greg Allen, but it has to do with all the things that are going on in the theater right now. And there was also one from Jody Hanson. He's the commissioner, the chair of the commission. So if somebody else wants to talk for a second, I'll find it.
Well, I can say one more thing about the library.
Yes, say something about the library. No, I didn't.
Please check. The library has its own website. There are every weekend there are programs, every multiple opportunities. People come, they perform, they give lectures, they give talks. It's all very well advertised in the library and on their own website. So do check and take advantage of this terrific community resource. Also, your friends will be very happy if you give Girl on the Train tours of Irvington. That has been very exciting for out-of-town visitors.
All right.
Want me to,
Is there a package of that, or do we have, that'd be kind of cute, we'd have like something someone could get downloaded.
Larry, do you want to start your report while we look for more theater developments?
Sure. So I have 2 things. One is good, one's bad. So I'll start with the bad thing. We were notified last week by the Hitachi company that we had been working with on the microgrid project that the microgrid is in fact not feasible after further review. So we will not be going forward with that project. I had said from the beginning that, or most recently I should say, that this project has the potential of either being a complete bust or it could transform the downtown of this village, and unfortunately the numbers didn't work out the way they had originally thought. But it was not without trying anyway. So that's the bad news. The good news is that we are expecting delivery of 20 benches for Main Street, which is part of the Hudson River Greenway grant that we received, and those are being delivered on Thursday, we expect, and that they'll be placed out on Main Street with some of the old ones removed.
Are they coming assembled?
Yes.
Wow.
When you order more than a certain number, they come assembled free. So that's it.
So in terms of microgrid, is there any future steps on this one? I guess, I understand that the real issue, underlying issue was it turned out that it really does cost a lot of money to dig the street up.
Yep.
But that number was less than, the number that I saw passed around was much less than Con Ed projected.
Yeah.
So is there any other way to look at trying to go forward with something like this? And I don't mean right away, but I just mean in terms of what are the kinds of plays are there that might...
I mean, the plays are that the village has to make up the difference. Otherwise there's no private investment. So.
And there's no kind of grant funding or anything else that you know of, or that we know of?
Not that I know of, no. But I mean, it doesn't mean we won't find some, but it's,
So the difference
Okay.
was 2.5 million more than they expected?
yes.
Was that it? I mean, I can't.
Yeah, around there, yeah, 2.3.
Okay, so the film is November 12th, 7:30 PM. That's the All Shorts Irvington Film Festival that always gets a packed crowd, so that's the most recent thing coming up at the theater. Thank you.
Excellent. Well worth the wait, John.
I have a lot more, but.
Clerk Treasurer?
Okay.
Then we tease that up. I like this.
At our next meeting, we have scheduled our independent auditor, Susan Orosi, from the managing partner, PKF O'Connor Davies, the annual presentation of our financial statements. That'll be on the 21st. And just to give you a little bit of a preview, the village did have an excellent year, a very active year financially. The general fund, which is our operating budget, had an increase of our fund balance of $760,000. The presentation you'll get from Susan next week, or 2 weeks from now, there's a lot of other components, and it does get a little difficult to follow, so I just wanted to give you the simple one-line version. There's a lot of designations of fund balance and restricted and non-restricted, but essentially, our fund balance grew by over $700,000. On the expenditure side, we have like a $16.5 million budget. Of the budgeted expenditures, we came in under budget by about $400,000. Some of those monies were encumbered, but basically that's really almost spending like 97% of your budget, which is really only achievable through a lot of, working with department heads and everyone monitoring the budget and making the adjustments as we go along during the year. So that was on the expenditure side. The rest of the $760,000 came on the revenue side, and the strong revenues can really be attributed to a couple of things. One, the single most largest was probably the building department activity. Another one was filming. Filming alone was over $100,000. That was unanticipated revenue to the village. So that really was great.
We gotta get,
Mortgage tax was actually stronger than anticipated. That brought in an extra $177,000 to our bottom line. When we re-signed for our cell tower agreements, that brought in an extra over $40,000, $350,000. So the details will be in the financial report. I just wanted to give you the good news that the village did really have a very strong year, and it was both coming in under budget on expenses and then a very strong revenue stream.
so when you said the
760,000 increase to our bottom line.
right, but that was a combination of revenue
Revenue
and
and savings.
saved, not expended
Not
expenses.
expended. And that's also taken into account that we appropriated about $460,000 of fund balance during the year. So when we kicked off our last year's budget, we used approximately $175,000, I don't remember the exact number. And then during the year, we used money to offset our capital expenses. So during the year, we used some of those anticipated savings. So despite spending $460,000 in fund balance, we still increased it by over $760,000.
Okay, so I don't know if this is the time, or we wait until next week, or whatever it is, when, is it a work session that they're coming in?
No, she comes to regular board meeting.
Okay, so, I mean, what I'd like to know is that question about what is a reasonable expansion of the fund balance before you start looking at whether or not, I don't know where you cut back on revenues, taxes, but is there something like, I know our tax rate has been pretty low, our increases that we do annually, but is there some kind of feedback that happens at some point rather than constantly accumulating? Is there a rate of accumulation that's recommended? I guess that's the question.
One of the measurements would be the fund balance as a percent
of your total revenues.
Yeah.
And right now, it came in, with using these numbers, it's about 25%.
Which is high. Yeah, we want to keep it between 10 and 15 usually.
So
10 and 15 is a target. You know, Moody's likes us to be at 25%, but I think it's got to come down a bit, which is a good problem to have, of course. But yeah.
Well, I guess because the thing is, you know, I don't know what the components are exactly in terms of the trending, but you know, we always talk about how in the last couple of years we've talked about how there's been a surge in building department revenue fees, but that you can't rely on that.
Sustainable, right, you can't project.
So, you know, I guess that would be another one of these discussions when we start looking at the budget again. Isn't that going to be sooner than later?
Yes.
Not too far, yeah.
Maybe we need to have this discussion a little bit.
Yeah. No, we spent a fair amount of time on it this past year.
We did increase it quite a bit.
We did, yeah.
Oh, we did increase that appropriate, $175,000.
Yeah. Hey, look, there's nothing wrong with increasing a budget like that, but you just need to be prepared when you're dealing with an economically sensitive revenue like that. You need to be prepared to respond if things go south.
Exactly.
That's all.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, mortgage tax is the same way.
And Brenda, you said we came in how much under budget?
We came in, expenditures were 468,000 under budget. That was the total, right? Of that, some of that is encumbrances with purchase orders, but looking at just expenses. So if you're looking at, you know, when you come up with that number, I gave up 760,000. We increased our fund balance by, the components would be the 468,000, so we came in under budget on expenses. Total revenues came in $759,000 higher than budgeted. But what comes out is the amount of fund balance that was appropriated during the year, and that was $465,000. So I just want to also highlight how well the water fund had an excellent year. You know, we've been trying to whittle down that deficit. The year prior, it wasn't such a dramatic decrease to the deficit. This year, I'm happy to report it was a dramatic decrease to the deficit. Into the budget, we planned a $200,000 decrease. We put in the budget to aim for that. Very fortunately, we didn't have too many unanticipated, you know, breaks in the water mains. And so we were able to realize that $200,000 deficit decrease. But on the revenue side, with an increase that we increased the rates by, and also some efficiencies with our billing systems and just capturing more billable water, we decreased our deficit by $474,000. So that was more than double what we were aiming for. So looking at our total water deficit, it's a decrease of about 40%.
Wow.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
So the deficit decreased from, it was 1,131,000, and it decreased down to 657,000.
That's great.
That's good. It's going in the right direction.
So
You have to get ready for Lonky to be on the board.
Supposed to say
Yeah.
just wanted to share that, you know, those two major components were good. And the rest of the budget was fine too. The plans were fine also. But those were just dramatic, and I just wanted to.
Yeah, sewer budget went up by $1 million deficit.
Excellent.
Thank you. Good news.
Village Attorney's report. Nothing in front of us, so it's, public comment. Review of action items.
Well, there's two main areas. I mean, we didn't identify them specifically. One of them was following up on the fence discussion with Joe and reporting back and all that. I can also throw in there a request to have our planning consultant come up with a list of areas to be reviewed that was suggested.
Can I raise one other question? Since we are not going to proceed with the microgrid, and we had before that voted not to go with Con Edison's proposal to give us backup protection for any loss of power, is there any other alternatives we might be exploring at this point?
Not at this point,
No.
no. The Con Edison option's gone, but
Agreed that you were going to say that. And we can't revisit that, of course.
No, I think that funding's gone.
Okay.
So,
So we're adjourning?
Yeah,
it
sound like
Oh.
Mark has something else,
no, I keep trying to think about,
finding other ways to.
well, if we were, I mean, I don't know what that, it comes into whether or not if we look out long enough, do we start trying to develop a fund to pay for some of this in the future, like we have a lot of excess in the fund reserve,
Drop in the bucket.
Well, I understand that right now, but I mean, if you do a drop in a bucket over 5 years is actually a rather large
Well,
splash.
we have to think, I mean, it's a big disappointment. We have to think about what we do, how we do it, keep our eyes open.
Well,
But
I guess what I'm saying, Connie, is I totally agree, but I think that kind of, maybe after we get over the disappointment, we have to sort of sit down and try to be proactive about what are the ways.
yeah, but I mean, keep our eye open for ideas and,
The research that was done is valuable, so
Yeah,
that
it's not
research
wasted.
is not wasted at
Yeah.
all, so.
Yeah.
We'll be ready to pounce when there's an opportunity. I don't know what else to say. You can't sit in a meeting like this and come up with
No.
ideas on such a complicated topic, but.
we know a lot
have-
about it.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of work done.
Yep.
We
And
have a
know
lot
what
of,
and we know what the potential could be, we just don't know how to get there yet. But.
yeah, so that knowledge isn't gonna go to waste, so.
No, it wasn't wasted at all.
Kind of what I mean, like keep our eye out for possible ways to use all this and, anyway.
We have one couple of matters with
Oh, okay.
with Mary Ann, but just if you adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn. Second, please.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed?